Have you ever taken pause in your mundane lives, to contemplate your impending death day? Imagine, perhaps, that you knew the precise day, hour, moment that your life will expire into death's embrace. How would our lives be if we knew when we were to die? One could imagine a world gone mad, until our species had been reduced to small, sparsely scattered tribes around the globe. A survival of the fittest scenario, in an ever-diminishing quest for self-preservation. I mean, we all want to prolong the inevitable, right? Paranoia will be the dominant emotion, as people are caught in a vicious vortex, a downward spiral of catch-22. You see your death waiting patiently for you at journey's end, and as your time draws nearer, you are absorbed along with everybody else into the mass of obsessed suspicion. Death walks in many guises. Death may even walk in your shoes. You could be driving your car, lose concentration for a moment, and inadvertently take the life of a child chasing a ball out into the street. The child knows its death is nigh, but may lack the skill or proper comprehension of the matter, and then death steps in to take the prize. Nevertheless, the parents might also know the time of their offspring's death, as children are prone to speak what's on their little minds, particularly on subject matter of such finality. Would they not be extra vigilant in that final hour? Of course, they would be right there, not allowing their child either from side nor sight. Death, however, is always up for a challenge, easily providing the necessary distraction to snatch this prize from their grasp. Thankfully, it is not within the normal capacity of humanity to know such ominous detail. Normal, I did say, however. There are a small few around the globe who have this terrible foresight. There is the case of Dylan Bantram, for instance. Born in 1982, Dylan is due to die at 3:57:24 p.m. Friday, April 4th, 2022. This is something Dylan has known instinctively for as long as he can remember, though the thought is relegated for the most part to his subconscious, as the years race by much faster than Dylan would prefer. The herald of his impending doom is beginning to push its way into the fore, taking up residence in his everyday thoughts. After a mere 36 years on this earth, he only has 3 years, 4 months, 27 days, and 30 minutes exactly, until the bell's final toll. Dylan has always been more than a touch irritable. Recently, though, with the heavy burden weighing on his unconscious mind and bleeding through into his everyday awareness, his impatience is beginning to pose a problem for him when out in public. He has gradually distanced himself from lifelong friends and barely keeps contact with his family. Dylan obsesses constantly over just who it is that could be instrumental in his demise. It could be friend, foe, stranger, or dear old Uncle Joe. The poor fellow drives himself mad on an hourly basis, with all the possibilities that present themselves to his troubled mind. Many times, Dylan has contemplated the unthinkable. To cheat death is out of the question. He knows this in his heart. But what if he was to beat death to the punch and take his own life before the appointed expiration date? Now that would be something to laugh about in his premature grave. Pacing around the self-imposed prison, which is his house, Dylan thinks of ways to kill himself. He's a bright fellow with a vivid imagination, and some of his ideas are spectacular, to say the least. A lot of them will require him to leave the house, though, and he's not sure if he's quite ready for that yet. His agoraphobia and high levels of anxiety prevent him from being able to carry out some of his more inventive ideas. He will prefer a painless death, really, like maybe a heroin overdose, or an obscene overindulgence of alcohol and sleeping pills. But hey, if you're going to go out on your own volition, why not do it in style? Standing in his kitchen, he absentmindedly goes through the motion of running a blunt butter knife across his wrist. The contemplations of suicide are now a prevalent aspect of his thinking. He comes to the realization that death by misadventure is pretty much out of the question for the next few years. This gives him a newfound confidence to venture beyond the relative safety of his house, in search of an inventive way to kill himself and subsequently spit in the face of death. Opening the front door and stepping out onto the porch, a quickly passing rush of apprehension makes him pause, but only for a moment. Taking a deep breath, Dylan steps confidently onto his weedy, overgrown lawn and heads for the street. He has no idea where he is going, just anywhere that may give him some form of inspiration to carry out his morbid plan. The overcast sky and slightly chilled breeze add to the dour mood that permeates his mind as he wanders aimlessly along the footpaths towards the heart of town. He is bemused at the oblivious nature of the people he passes in the street. Not a care in the world shows on their faces. Well, not entirely. Of course, they all carry around the everyday worries of living, but the fear of death seems absent from their thoughts, and this just pisses Dylan off considerably. He wishes he didn't have this terrible foresight, and burns with furious envy at the rest of humanity. Berating himself for his distracted mind, Dylan returns his ponderings back to the ominous task at hand. Where and how? Behind him, several feet away and over his left shoulder, death follows, chuckling quietly.
Not today, Dylan. Not today.
As he gets closer to the center of town, the streets gradually become more populated. Dylan starts to feel that dreaded anxiety build in his chest. People. He has become so accustomed to his own company, the mere thought of people invading his personal space, let alone the actual sight of them up ahead, causes him to falter in his progress. Shortness of breath and a fine layer of sweat oozing from every pore accompany his racing mind. Fuck this, he thinks to himself, seriously considering just turning back and a run to the sanctuary of his home. He's come this far though, much farther than he has in several months. He's out here with a specific purpose this time as well, in the middle of the day, and not in the relative quiet of the late evening, which is when he would normally venture out to get groceries or smokes. No, this time, Dylan Bantram is on a mission. Today, he will cheat death, or so he has himself convinced. With an increasing volume of traffic on the road, he abandons his plan to be inventive in his demise, suddenly stepping from the footpath. Molly Tenenbaum is late. Her daughter has finished school for the day, and will be waiting out front to be picked up. Neither Molly nor Dylan realize it, but death has played a hand in Dylan's impromptu decision to leave the house. Insidiously so. Reaching for her phone, she plans to call her little girl and let her know she will be there within minutes. She fumbles, juggling it one-handed before dropping it to the floor on the passenger side. Cursing her clumsiness, Molly unclips her seatbelt and quickly reaches for her phone, taking quick glances back up to the road ahead of her. As her hand closes around it, she looks up just in time to see some sad-looking idiot walk right out in front of her. In a fit of panic, she drops the phone again, gripping the wheel with both hands and slamming on the brakes, swerving wildly to miss the surprised pedestrian. Molly's life flashes before her eyes, to be replaced with a fast-approaching bus shelter on the opposite side of the road. The last thing Molly Tenenbaum feels is her face shattering the glass of her windscreen as she rockets from her seat, clearing the hood of her car to smash bodily into the steel frame of the mangled bus shelter. Death has claimed his prize. Dylan stands in shock at the tragedy he has just caused. A mix of anger and adrenaline courses violently through his veins at his thwarted attempt to cheat death. His moment of disappointment is disturbed by the screech of brakes, followed by the deafening sound of metal on metal. Not only has he caused the death of his targeted motorist, the accident has caused several cars behind to brake suddenly and collide with each other in a 3-car pileup. He doesn't stick around to see if there are any more fatalities at the site of his botched first suicide attempt. Dylan absconds as fast as his feet can carry him, death following close behind. One failure down, and already Dylan suspects death is playing with him. His stomach is in his chest, and his heart is in his throat. He slows his abrupt getaway to a labored walk. So unfit after spending so much time moping around indoors, the brisk run itself nearly kills him. Maybe running himself to death is an option, but no, that would require far too much effort. And he is an inherently lazy character. Dylan ducks down a narrow laneway and stops to catch his breath. A few paces away, he spots a broken liquor bottle littering the path. Although there are people walking by in the street, the laneway is deserted. Dylan walks over to the mess of broken glass and squats down in contemplation. He could open himself up and bleed out in minutes, but not here. Someone was sure to see him from the road and come to his aid. He picks up the bottleneck and begins moving farther down the lane. The anxiety begins to take hold again, and Dylan stops leaning against the 7-foot cyclone fence, running down the length of the laneway down one side. He slowly slides himself down the springy wire into a squat, bottleneck dangling loosely in his hand, and rests his head on his knees, taking slow, deliberate breaths. He waits for the distressing sensation to pass, unaware that he is just about to have company. He lets his empty hand flop forward in front of him, raising his hand slightly to gaze at the jumble of veins down the inside of his forearm. This is it. Uninterrupted and free to carry out the deed, Dylan begins to mentally go through the motion of opening his arm from wrist to elbow. The burning tickle of bile enters his throat at the thought of the pain he is about to put himself through. His eyes shift to the dirty, broken glass in his other hand, and he hesitates before bringing one of the sharp points to the soft flesh of his wrist. He exhales a slow, shuddering breath and presses into the flesh slightly, feeling the hot prick and then the pop of the first layer of skin. His nerves get the better of him, and he pulls away. Now that he has the power of his own life and death in his hands, the fear of imminent and immense pain stifles his resolve. Part of him just wants to submit to death and wait for his turn, and he struggles momentarily with the belligerent side of him which refuses to be a victim to circumstances beyond his control. He reasons with his acquiescent self that he can in no way bear to continue this depressing existence for the next 3.5 years, only to have it end without his say-so. Again, he brings the jagged glass to his wrist. Again, he pauses at the unnerving intrusion. So caught up in the intensity of the moment, Dylan is oblivious to the two hoodlums meandering through the laneway. The cacophony of thoughts screaming to be heard above one another in the rattling cage of Dylan's mind drowns out the voice of the instigating thug. "A cutter, eye! Do it, you fucking wimp!" These people are ghosts, apparitions beyond his awareness. Dylan has strayed from the reality of the world around him, lost in the realm of his conflicting intent to the point of shutting out the world entirely. Although they stand over him, in his mind they're not there at all. Not there, that is, until they attack. He is shocked out of his reverie by a solid boot to his ribs, followed by another, then another. They don't stop kicking him as he kneels over and curls up, attempting unsuccessfully to cover himself from their merciless assault. A sudden and violently painful ring silences the voices in his head and brings Dylan fully back to the moment. Dizzied and battered as the two continue to lay the boot in, Dylan finally snaps. He lashes out with the bottleneck and connects with the calf of an incoming leg. He sees them now, and he most definitely hears the sickening sound of tearing flesh, followed by a high-pitched yelp of pain. Anger rises in Dylan's chest, incensed at the actions of these two low-life hoons, distracting him from his purpose, thinking themselves above him in any way. Death discriminates not, and as fate would have it, today, Death treads surely in the shoes of Dylan Bantram. In taking pause due to the unexpected retaliation, the two thugs aren't ready for what comes next. Dylan uncurls from his prone position on the littered ground and rolls towards the assailants, lashing out wildly with the glass. The already injured party bears the brunt of his enraged strike, the sharp glass splintering into a new wound as the bottle stabs deep into the thigh of the same leg. A vicious punch descends between Dylan's shoulder blades, delivered by the uninjured foe, but to very little effect. The adrenaline screaming through Dylan now rendering him near impervious, he lunges with the bottle to stab into the side of the second thug. His mate down and bleeding profusely from his leg, the cowardly goon deserts him, holding his side and half running back towards the street. Dylan leaps to his feet as though he hadn't just undergone a savage beating and towers over the fallen thug, whose demeanor has gone from that of a threatening bully to a whimpering slug. His pleading goes unheeded, and the darkness in Dylan's gaze terrifies him. As he advances and the thug scampers in pain retreat across the ground, Death smiles warmly over Dylan's shoulder. His rage subsides and is replaced with a cold intent as a sinister leer creeps across his visage. His suicidal thoughts now pushed to the back of his mind, Dylan becomes consumed with the aspiration to end this pernicious cunt's life. His movements, at first slow and deliberate, accentuate the inevitability of the assailant turned victim's fate. Dylan relishes the terror playing on the downed thug's face. He is no longer himself, but a manifestation of evil as the darkness plunges the soul into unfathomable depths. As though a charge jolts through him, Dylan's slow, menacing advance transforms into a sudden frenzied maelstrom of stabs and slashes as he falls upon the man with a guttural scream. The ripping sounds of glass through flesh mingle sickly with the howling of Dylan's homicidal rage, and the screams of terror and pain issuing from his victim. His friend stops further down the lane, turning to see the horrific murder taking place, his own wounds soaking through his shirt and staining down his jeans. After several stunned moments, he turns again and resumes his cowardly retreat. Drenched in the blood of his victim, Dylan rises achingly to his feet, the savage kicking he has just endured now bringing its results to prominence as the adrenaline subsides and the red fog in his vision clears. He stumbles backwards to fall against the cyclone fence, doubles over and empties his stomach on the ground. Dylan stares at the puddle of spew, saliva still drooling steadily from his gaping mouth as he struggles to breathe. What began in his mind as a good idea suddenly loses all appeal, and Dylan decides he should abandon this quest before more people die through his foolish attempts. With a grimace of pain, he straightens himself up and, nursing his cracked, bruised ribs, limps down the laneway, away from the road entrance. The blood staining his hands, arms, and clothing, now caked and dry, Dylan looks down on himself and shudders. He was never a violent person. More just a misanthropic loner who preferred a respectable distance between himself and the next person. What he has just done is far from characteristic. Dylan has now become a murderer. He tries to rationalize it in his mind as he limps along a back street in the direction of home. It was by no means a premeditated act. He had simply reacted at first, and then something took over. The police will be looking for him. First, the massive accident he had caused, resulting in at least one gruesome death, maybe more. And now, a truly violent murder, as well as an assault to add to the charges. There has been no shortage of witnesses either. Many people saw him flee the scene of the car accident, and the person he stabbed in the side had made his escape, no doubt heading straight to either a hospital or a police station. Dylan Bantram is now in some serious trouble. No more fucking around, he decides. As soon as he gets home, he will be heading straight for the bathroom cabinet and taking a razor to his jugular. There will be no mishaps then, no turning back after the fatal slice, and no interference from Death, who he is now convinced is stalking, thwarting, and taunting him in his attempts. Once again, Dylan is lost in his reverie, oblivious to his surroundings and deep in tortured contemplation. He continues his hobbled journey towards home, only 2 streets away now, and he can end things once and for all. The thought dominates his very being, drowning out any other consideration. Crossing the street, the deafening screech of tires causes him to look up from his shambling feet, but a moment too late. The bus driver had seen him, but didn't expect him to turn suddenly into the path of his vehicle, and although he instinctively slammed his brakes, there was simply no time or safe distance to stop. Dylan's attempts to move are in vain. He can feel nothing but a strong throb in his skull, and an uncomfortable intrusion traveling from between his lips to down his throat. He can hear a steady beeping sound and several voices amidst bustling activity. His vision is drastically blurred. All he can see is shadows, intermittently disturbing an otherwise harsh, bright light. It takes him several confused minutes to realize he is in a hospital, several minutes more to realize he is paralyzed from the neck down. His vision blurs even more so as the tears of realization fill his eyes and begin to slink down the sides of his face, tickling his ears. Death. Chuckles softly and departs.